Today I'm looking at an Astro, checking for a misfire. There was a misfire fault code. It's not running on all cylinders, and I've noticed that the green trace, checking the secondary there, that's a much smaller spike. Looks like it's firing on a wasted spark, would look like that, I suppose, or if it's got no compression. So that's what I'm looking at. It's not like the other cylinders where you see a higher compression. So it looks like I've got a compression fault, but it is actually getting a spark. I don't think there's any compression on that cylinder. This way I'm using the secondary waveform almost like a compression tester. Although the main reason I'm doing this is to check it for a spark because of the misfire fault code. Well, there you can see it right there, and you could probably hear it. We've got 3 missing 1, 3 missing 1, 3 missing 1. We kind of got the impression it was the 3rd cylinder from the ignition waveform. So if we just use that for now, that's our cylinder 3. And we've got 1, 2, 3 that are pretty similar. Could look and see what the amps are during those runs. Bringing this down, maybe a little more. Yeah, so the high one, the good one, it's always going to be a bit higher because it's following a low one. So I'll go down a bit more. See if it's right there. All about 122 amps. Right there. Give or take, they're around there, apart from the missing one. What's the amp hours on the battery? 60. 3 times 6, 6, 12, 18. So looking at, they're all a bit low. But the battery might be a bit low, but you can clearly see one of them is a dead cylinder there. So where's it going? Where's that pressure going? We'll do a test. Put some pulse sensors on and see where that's going. Got some pressure sensors set up, one in the exhaust, one going into the intake. This hose goes right into the intake under there. Cranked it, same thing again. Try and get you zoomed in. I'm not zoomed in so you can see it. See where we're missing the cylinder, the dip, right there. It's directly in line every time with a bigger vacuum pull on the exhaust. Vacuum pull on the exhaust. Every time that lines up perfect. And we're seeing a change on the inlet as well. There's the inlet. Anything happen at the same time? Yes, we've got a lower pressure on the inlet. If we're looking at that line, that one's lower every time. That lines up exactly with it. So you could take that away and have a little think about what's going on again. But it does look like we've got a valve problem. I got the cylinder head off the car now and filled up the ports with water to see where they're going, where the water's going. This one's on the inlet side, and the inlet valves look good. There's no leaks, but on the exhaust, you can see what the problem is right there on cylinder 3. There's a big piece missing in the exhaust valve. And that explains why there was no compression on cylinder 3 and why we could see when cylinder 3 was firing or supposed to be on the power and combustion, there was a big vacuum on the exhaust sensor. Now I've got it flipped over, looking at the exhaust side. You can see these don't leak at all. They're great. It's just this one cylinder. Wonder what made it burn out. Maybe it's lean. Maybe the injector's got a fault that I might have to look into. If it's running lean, it'll only do it again. Look at that. That one, in fact, I'll just pour water in and see it just comes straight out. So it's definitely, one of them's leaking. I'm trying to weigh up whether the one next to it's leaking as well. Okay, this one is the burned out one. No, this one's the burned out one, if I get the right cylinder. That one, I'm wondering, with this high-tech method of water again, just try and get it out of the way so that I could see. It does look like it's only the one valve. That one looks totally dry. If I just show you that again, I'll try and put less in there so it doesn't totally come out the top one. There. Yeah, it's just coming out the top one. So we've got one valve out of all this that's burned out. Now I'm going to check the head's level. Just need to get a valve for it now. Check that's level. Get some card under that to soak up the oil a little bit. And then I'll come back to you when I've done a bit more on it. If you know what's wrong with it, and then you look back at the waveform and you can say, in this case, one of the exhaust valves is burned out, at least one, maybe the other one's not great, and then we could say that one had no compression, on a relative compression, it didn't show any peaks in that place, it was just missing, and it also had a massive vacuum on the exhaust pull during that same stroke of the engine, so at least we can look at it, and next time we'll know if we see that it's likely to be an exhaust. And what I'm trying to do is know what it is, rather than saying what I think it is. Maybe it's right, maybe it's wrong, but at least this way we can say this is what's wrong with it, because we can see it. We can also say what the waveform looked like. We can just say that that's what they look like in that situation. Hopefully it's helpful to other people though, because that's what I learn a lot from YouTube, and that's why I'm doing this, in case somebody wants to watch it and see what a burned out exhaust valve looks like on a relative compression with a pulse sensor in the exhaust and a pulse sensor in the intake. The only real thing I could see was, like I say, a massive vacuum on that. I also did an in-cylinder on all the cylinders. I'll get a look at those as well. Nothing really major. In fact, the interesting thing with this one, the in-cylinder, almost looked like the timing was out. But that might just be a character of when there's absolutely no compression on a cylinder. We'll check it after and see what the difference is like. Here's the valve that came out of it, and you can see there, it looks like somebody sliced it with an oxyacetylene torch. See right there? It's like burned right through. And again there. Like I said, I did check the one next to it because they're both in the same cylinder, and if it's running lean, there's a chance that the other one was going to be just the same as this, but it's not. The other one's fine. So that's what I'm doing today. I'll build it up and show you the waveforms when I finish. Here's an alternative way of checking it, filling it with water this way up. I couldn't do that on the other one that I did, the Corsair, because that was diesel and it doesn't have these recesses, it's just flat, so that's not going to work. But I've been away to do ball joints on a track rod end on a Honda Civic and come back, and this is still filled. Maybe that one there, no, it's just the way it looks, they're all filled. So the water's not seeping through. I'm going to check it all again when it's on the car, but so far it's looking good. That's it running now. I've got a lot of smoke out the exhaust because I've just started it. Just started to put the coolant into the engine. The heat up load doesn't work at all. That was one of the things they mentioned, but I think they're more interested in getting the car to run. Once it's warmed up and the smoke's cleared out of the exhaust, all the smoke that's been building up in there, I'm going to do the injector test to make sure they're all balanced, because I want to know if they are or not. They sound like they are. But just to be sure, I'll do that test. It is running fine, no misfires now, so that might be a clue that the injectors are okay. I just wanted to know why it burned out in the first place. And I'll show you those waveforms. I'll do an in-cylinder waveform and a pulse waveform to show the before and after, and I'll show you them. I've done a relative compression with the coils disconnected. This has had a new coil pack, it looks like, before I got here. It could have been for the misfire. So if I go over 4 of these, 1, 2, 3, 4, he'll go a bit more. Make this disappear for now. What have we got there? Even. So we've got the compressions are all pretty even now. Before we had one that was missing totally. So we've got a total even at 128, which is a little low. Supposed to be 3 times, but this is amps. We're not looking at pressure though. So maybe it is okay. I got told it should be 3 times the battery amp hours, but in this case they look even and it runs, so maybe it is okay. But the main thing is these exhaust pulls are the same. We don't have the big vacuum pull that was in line where that should be before. We don't have that one that goes really big. They're all the same as well. I might show you that. I'll save that as a screen capture and then I'll go over it all again. I'm going to do an in-cylinder cranking on this one so I can compare it. Okay, let's save that. And come back out of there. Save that one. That's those 2 done. So that's proof the compression's good. So next I've got to take this off and put my in-cylinder in there. I'll go and get that. I've just done a relative compression using the PV500. Here, I've now got compression there. I'm going to put some rulers up, and I could do the waveform library as well. Waveform library, I mean this one. But for now, I'll just put up these measurements. Not measurements, rulers. There we go, rulers, phase rulers on. We bring this one to there. And the other one, which is here, has got to go over here. Roughly there. What I'm noticing now is, I'll bring it up on the other one later and go over it, but you see this has shifted. When it was low compression, the same piston, same camshafts, this is what 3 of the cylinders look like. It was 30 degrees. You see it better on the other one that I'll bring up in a bit. 30 degrees. But this one, it's 30 degrees before, and when it was low compression, it looked like it was 30 degrees after. I would have said if I only did one, I would have said that it was, the timing was out based on the other one, but because I did the other 3 cylinders, I was thinking the timing can't be out on one cylinder only, because they all share the same camshaft, unless the cam lobes had turned or something and gone wrong in some way like that. But in this case, I'll bring it up on the other waveform and compare them and let you see what I'm trying to say is that low compression, when this was low because of the exhaust valve, it looked like the timing was out as well. So that might just be something to bear in mind, that low compression can make it look like the timing's out. What I'm looking at here is the relative compression, 3 cylinders and then 1 that's missing. And this one, I know it's not very good to look at with the glare, but this one is the exhaust. And we can see here, we've got this vacuum showing on the exhaust delta sensor, on the pulse sensor. That lines up right there with the missing one every time. We've got the vacuum there, the pulse sensor in the intake. Here's the main thing that's noticeably different. So that one, it's every time we've got the missing resistance or mechanical resistance when I'm cranking the engine. So there's no amps, or not as much amps, right here, and it's exactly in line with the exhaust getting some vacuum. So what I'm thinking here is it's just drawing in the air. through the exhaust back into, because the piston will be going up, and then when the piston starts to go down, it's just going to pull the air in through the exhaust into the cylinder where the piston's going down. In the same way, on the inlet, when the inlet valve's open, you would have the, well, I'm not showing it here, but when the inlet valve's open and the piston goes down, it draws air into the cylinder through the inlet. Now that's what's happening here, but the other way, the exhaust valve isn't open. It's got a hole in it, so it's not sealing. So in a way it's the same thing. So as the piston's going down, it's just pulling in the exhaust air through the cylinder that's got the burnt out valve, cylinder 3 right there. And that's why that's lining up. It's pulling a vacuum in the exhaust when that starts to go down. In the same way, because the piston's not fussy which valve it's going to pull the air in. When the piston goes down, the piston's going down. If any of the two valves are open and the piston's going down, if it's the intake valve that's open, it'll draw air in from the intake. The intake's sealed because it's supposed to be a power stroke, but the exhaust valve has a hole in it. It's just going to do the same thing but through the exhaust. So that's why we see the pull on the exhaust, the vacuum pull, lining up where there's no compression. Here's the in-cylinder waveform. This was cylinder 3. This one has a burned out exhaust valve before the repair. As you can see, there's very little pressure, probably nothing, almost nothing. You can see the very gradual slope coming up and the sudden drop there. Gradual slope, sudden drop, and the same one again there. You can see the timing here. The highest point, bottom dead center is here. The highest point is where the exhaust stroke starts here, where on the exhaust is open. It's actually 30 degrees after bottom dead center, or after the marker. Let's see if I can bring that up and show you. Right there. It's almost 30, it's not quite, that's 30. So it's getting on for somewhere down there, 30. But if I was to look at the other one, the same one again, I mean, same cylinder, after replacing one valve. I only did the one valve, I didn't do the other one. Took the other one out, looked at it, made sure it was okay. See here, the other one was after, this one's before. About 30 before now, so it shifted. It shifted because this tower has shifted. It's not gradual and then dropping. It's kind of even. Similar amount on both sides of the line. Same one again. Similar amount both sides of the line. But this definitely looks like it's changed. So one thing I was thinking is it could look like the timing's out if you were only going to check this in one cylinder and you pick the bad one, the one with low compression. It might look like the timing's out, and the timing's out, maybe if the timing was out, you might think that's why it's got low compression. But it's actually not the timing. You see how it shifted over here now? It's not the timing that's out, it's just the way that the peak is here. Whereas if it had proper compression, the peak would be in a different place. So I would have put the marker in a different place. So that's something I found interesting. It changes, it looks to change the timing, but it's not. It's just the leaning slope. It's more gradual on one side, steeper on the other. It can give you the illusion that the timing's out. Hopefully this has been helpful to somebody like me trying to improve on my waveforms. I got a couple of books that I use. Graham Stokes. That's a very useful book for the waveforms, and I got Brandon Steckler's waveform book that goes into a lot more detail about these sort of problems. But it still can be confusing to look at for me when I get the one coming in and I try and figure out what's wrong with it. But at least if I know what's wrong with the engine and I've taken screen captures first, then I can go back and link it all together, and it helps me for future ones. Thanks for watching.